I'm Jeff Cook.
And I'm TJ Wilson.
And this is Around the Circle.
I'm walking slowly. I'm taking my time. All I could talking is starting to rhyme. I'm letting go of lonely, letting go of strife. I just can't get enough of this beautiful life.
The Enneagram is a map of the human personality. It's a tool for navigating relationships. It creates a language for what motivates us and helps us look at the way we look at everything else. Most importantly, the Enneagram's a mirror because sometimes you need help seeing yourself. My name's Jeff Cook. I am a philosopher in Greeley, Colorado, and with me is TJ Wilson, businessman, lover of theology, and Enneagram ninja.
Hello.
Boss.
Hey.
Summer Olympics are concluded.
They are.
I decided to buy a ski pass this afternoon.
Sure.
It's time to transition. I am one of the few in Colorado that when it starts snowing, I'm like, yes, this snow is going.
Yeah. I feel the same way, but not even a little bit about skiing.
No, you get to dress properly.
Yeah. It was cool last week, and I got to wear jackets. Oh, man.
It is all looking uphill. All the things are going to die. It's going to get cold.
Yep.
It's going to be beautiful.
And I'll get to get my jackets out.
Well, speaking of trying to impress people socially with your fashion sense, and I realized looking at our list of episodes on the Instincts that we're going to have, drumroll, 9 episodes.
Yes.
For our deep dive into the Instincts. So congratulations.
Victory is mine. Not really. It's not mine.
We're shifting into the social instinct.
Last and least.
You and I can start a little support group there, I'm sure. We just don't want to be with all the people.
Right.
This is a gear, and we've consistently kind of working this into our language. It's just pinging for me as true that this is a gear. And I think I especially see this mostly because in the traditional way of understanding instincts, this would be my repressed instinct. But I have to shift into this fairly regularly.
Sure.
I'm really thrilled to hear your thoughts on this, because coming to the list and coming to our own study of each of the instincts, this was the one that I just off the top of my head, I couldn't name a handful of, attributes of this specific instinct. And so after doing the study, I was like, oh, there it is. And this makes sense.
Yeah, I was particularly thinking about you specifically in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
That may be one of the only places where this comes out for you. But there's a lot of us in the world with it, our awareness is turned toward our place in the group, and that's what this instinct is about. If we talked about with the self-preservation instinct, it's about protecting myself and keeping myself alive. The pairing instinct is about keeping me and the other alive, and how do we propagate the species moving forward? And then this comes to the group. How do we keep the group alive and moving forward? What's best for the group? And this instinct comes in and fills in those spaces to say, what's my role here? What do I do in the group setting?
We'll get to all of our descriptions here in a second. But for me, when I look at the descriptions, I have worked a handful of jobs that were more communal in nature. I've worked at McDonald's, I've worked construction, I've worked as a teacher, and I've done, 15 years of church work. Those are the places where I engage this gear. Yep. Most is in those spaces. My oneness, especially because I'm so dominant in the bonding sense, I've really been attracted to doing entrepreneurial work. I've really been attracted to having more personal oversight, authority, and risk, as opposed to trying to put out a bunch of applications and get the job to get me the career that I wanted. So that getting the career has never been really a high priority for me.
Right.
Having oversight over myself has been.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I have had jobs where I've had to shift here. And so I suppose socially, the social instinct, when I think about it, comes out most in those places. It's mostly work related. I don't feel like a lot of our list applies as much to family dynamics, but maybe we can talk about that.
Sure.
How about yourself? Like, where do you experience this?
Well, this is one that as we've been doing this deep dive, and like I've really spent a good amount of time researching this and spending time with other people's thoughts about their own social instinct. Like that, I have a feeling that if I didn't also have a pain disease, I might be much more prominent with this social instinct, because a lot of it comes really natural to me. And like there is the sense of putting that energy into how other people see you, what you are contributing to the group, to what the group needs to accomplish, and how you help that or hinder that. There's so much in here that resonates with like the way I see it, particularly when thinking about like I own a business that is public facing. Like my job is to create a safe space for people to have really good coffee and a place where they can study, and the way that instinct comes out in that space is very prominent for me. And thinking about like the dynamics with my employees and the customers, and like my role there is to create this environment where everyone gets to experience it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a big part of the social, like what am I contributing so that benefits others.
I imagine we're going to talk about quite a bit of that as we're moving through and elevating some of these things. Let's jump in with some of the big themes that came out in our study.
Love it.
In terms of what is the social instinct? How does it come out in our desires and the rest?
Great.
Well, I have a handy dandy list in front of us. Why don't I start? The first big thing with the social instinct comes like a personal awareness, the social dynamics, and especially the emotional sensitivity to yourself and others.
Yeah.
Just like you have to navigate, you have to have a radar for where other people are coming from in order to actually thrive socially.
Right.
And so, and a lot of that's going to be, as was said, it's going to be emotional in nature for the most part.
Yeah. For the most part, I think we'll mainly see this elevating the ability to read others, not necessarily to deal with the emotions internally, because I don't think this social instinct is directly connected to that heart center in that way. I think this one is much more about the mind and categorizing the information in a way like what relationships are most valuable for the betterment of the group. Like there's a hierarchy kind of putting information in its place, focus on this. But the point is to read other people, to understand like what do other people need, who's in leadership, who needs to be protected, who is someone, like should we assume that someone is not going to contribute in this group? And a lot of that comes from just reading other people. And that's a big part of what this instinct brings forward is understanding those group dynamics in a way that gives you a sense of your place and what you may need to fix or contribute or what parts of yourself you need to bring because of how the group is interacting.
Love that it's not just heart. There is a very mental element there, and there's an intuitional element. Understanding where other people come from actually can, for body types, can be very, I'm intuiting that this person is angry or this person is sad, etc.
Right.
So however you come to the world, this is going to be a big element is where's the other person coming from.
Yeah. And I think that like a special note for that, and we'll note this in a couple of different places with a few specific types, but that also means that it doesn't necessarily mean that you're accurately reading the group. It could be that you are projecting your own thoughts and emotions onto the group and deciding for the group how to proceed.
Yeah, you might be really bad at this.
Yeah, it's totally possible. But your radar is for what does the group need?
Yes. Yeah, the target of your energies is going that direction.
Right.
It may function well, it may function badly.
Yeah.
Part of being a social animal means trying your best to develop your social radar and do that better.
Yep.
Hey, maybe you should listen to some more Enneagram podcasts. That'll help.
That's what it's all about.
second big one would be around boundaries. The social gear is going to engage boundaries because once we are part of a group, there's two sets of needs that really matter. There is the needs of the group and the whole, and there's also the needs of yourself as a person. We obviously talked quite a bit about this in terms of the self-pres instinct. But here, this is where thinking about what I need and what the group needs can often come into conflict. There is a dialogue. There is, what am I contributing, and is it sufficient for the rest of the group to care for me, love me, accept me? And on the flip side, am I burning myself out for the sake of everybody else? And there's not an easy answer there sometimes. This is a tension to be managed.
Right. And part of that also includes identity. Like, am I giving up my own needs for the sake of the group? Nines will do that. Fours might do that. Like, there are types that will sort of, like, when this instinct is dominant, we're sacrificing whatever we have in order to maintain the group's peace or integrity or whatever else. That there's that interplay, that tension between what do I need versus what do they need. Like, there is almost a fixation on this as part of this. Like, this is something that is part of the processing for those who are in this instinct.
It's another kind of subtopic here, but it's something I would love to return to in the future, and that's what's your social role. What's your type's social role?
Yeah. Because
your contribution to the group, often your best contribution often is probably going to flow out of your type's gift.
Right.
Like, what does your type do really well in social environments? Being able to name that can be incredibly helpful to connecting with others and not trying to be somebody you're not.
Right.
Because who you aren't isn't interesting.
I've heard it said.
But the social role is going to revolve kind of around that. What's my contribution? So a third one, and this is seldom talked about, but I think it's commonly processed, is the strategic element. A lot of times in social spaces, especially in work environments, there can be kind of a ladder climbing. There can be a, how am I getting the resources from the group that I need, the acclaim that I need, the job I need, want. There is posturing and positioning. There sometimes is the creation of alliances because somebody else in the group is an adversary. And all of that strategic thinking, likewise, comes out real strong here.
Yeah, there's, you mentioned the word contribution, and there's, like, because everyone has an agenda, right? So like, all the types are going to bring their own desires for the group to the group and move forward, wanting that to be the thing that's important, right? And sometimes your needs conflict with someone else's needs. So within this social instinct, we're all trying to get the group to align with our desires. And there's a significance that's needed within the things that we're contributing there. And if the group is not able to see what we're contributing, that can be a really big problem, because that means the group's not meeting my own needs. The group is not fulfilling the one thing that I need it to do. And that's different for every type. And that idea of, like, maneuvering, positioning, like, finding, you said alliances. I like alliances. That's a great word there. Like who do I need to attach to, serve, befriend within this group so that these needs get met? Like, where am I positioned? And all of this is, like, all three of these big themes are sort of the same thing, right? It's all about group dynamics. And this strategic part is, like, the intentional part of inserting yourself in the group and all of the things that surround that.
As you're talking, the thing that ought to be highlighted is, in some social arrangements, there is a leader. There's essentially a point person.
Yeah.
And and that will commonly color how the rest of, the group behaves, interacts, what gets rewarded, what gets shunned.
Right.
So if there's a two in charge, the relationality of everything and the loyalty there probably going to get emphasized much more highly. If a three is in charge, the question might be, are you making the rest of us, including myself, look good? Whereas the look of the organization may not matter if a 5 is in charge, if a 7 is in charge.
Right.
Commonly, like 9s who rise to kind of the leadership position are going to obviously try and create a harmonious environment in which everybody's heard and the rest. And who's in charge actually matters quite a bit to the rest of us, because then we start strategizing because we're commonly having to react to that leader. Yeah.
Right. And like the social adaptability is a big part of that instinct, like in this particular setting, like the idea of leadership hierarchy, like adapting to what's needed, adapting to where the leader is going. If you are the leader, like how do you shift your own presentation role in the group? Like how do you shift your stuff so that the group keeps you as a leader? All that's wrapped up in this.
Talking about social role may be real valuable. And then talking about organizations, same root word there, because it's a living thing.
Right.
Made up of people, not cells. And I mean, we're experiencing this in the midst of, obviously this year it's a presidential election, and like the style, type, motive of leaders actually matters quite a bit.
Right.
In terms of where are we as a people, as a community, as a country. Here in stateside, obviously we have lots of listeners who are not in the United States, but stateside, where that's something kind of going through our minds and hearts, is like, what is the energy, theme, posture we want to, what do we want to embody moving forward? Anyway, I hope people are thinking that way, but
right. Some of them are.
I think that's kind of you may not articulate it that way, but I do feel like a lot of this year is going to feel like that. It's like, who do we want to be? Seriously.
Sure.
Last on my list is validation. And anytime that you're contributing, if you're having to create boundaries, like this is what I'm bringing to the group, you need to receive. I think all types at some level need to receive something back from the group that they're pouring into. Otherwise, that group is not for you.
Right. Right.
They clearly don't care about you.
Yeah. This is not necessarily like you get an award at a big ceremony. That's not what this necessarily means. Some people probably
for some
want
people,
that, but realistically, it's like in each case for each type, there's going to be a particular kind of validation that they want to experience.
Right.
And because this is a social instinct, it has to come from outside of themselves.
Yeah, being able to read, am I cared for, loved, accepted here, is going to come through something. This, I suppose, in many ways, we've talked quite a bit about affect and how each of the types give and receive love. If you haven't seen those, you should go back into our catalog and find our episodes on affect. But that applies not only individually, applies in the group.
Right.
What do you need?
Right.
Validation has a lot of faces. And those are our 4 big ideas. So that emotional side, that balancing and boundary side, the strategic side, and validation. So we're going to just talk around the circle with each of the types and just kind of highlight those big 4 themes. And for TJ and I, that's what we saw as primary to the social instinct. Aside from that, you got anything else by way of setup?
Yeah, I want to bang my oft-repeated drum again. Just a reminder that the instincts are not necessarily predictors of whether or not we like to be around people. Like it could be very much the case that you're a little bit of an introvert and you don't necessarily like being in big groups, but when the social instinct is active, your filter is like your energy is going toward your place in the group. It could be that you don't want to be part of the group, but you have to be anyway, And so like this instinct is about the group. It is not necessarily saying that you love being at parties, because that's something different.
Right.
So,
Although it can be.
yeah, it can be, absolutely.
Yeah.
But if you don't like being at parties, that does not necessarily mean that you don't use your social instinct.
I got 4 quick things that I wanted to hit is to set this up that I thought were worth talking about. The first is kind of something to say and then dismiss. If you do the countertype idea, 7s, 8s, and 9s are the countertype here.
Yep.
So just want to footnote that at the beginning. I think it's going to be helpful to save them for the end.
I agree.
Because I think once we get into all of this, we'll see, well, is there really a difference here, 7, 8, 9?
Yeah.
Secondly, as I look through the list and what comes out, I kept thinking the repressed center is all over the places where people will struggle in their social instinct. If you are a thinking repressed person, how should I engage this relationship will be like a dominant kind of place that you kind of land. If you are a feeling repressed person, caring about the feelings of the rest of the group will commonly just be a dominant thing.
Yeah.
And again, on the action repressed, the group is moving here. Why are you being an anchor? This will be a comment. So I kept seeing repressed center all over how each of the types are going to struggle in the group.
Yeah. I get that. I like it.
A third thing is we've talked about the temperatures that bonding, pairing sexual types come across as hot, that self-pres instinct comes across as warm. This is the social instinct comes across as cool. And there seems to be a great reason there. It's like if you're cool, you are, as you were kind of saying, just very socially observant and probably not putting all of your energy out there because it can be overwhelming. And so those who navigate the world from that place of just being cool in their social spaces, that is the social gear. That's kind of how it looks when it manifests in you and me.
Right. Well, and I think a lot about homeostasis and the idea of like finding that equilibrium. And if the social instinct is about working together as a group, then it's less likely that you want to be hot or cold in that setting. You want to be a middle place in order to include all the people in the group, right? Yeah, it makes it a lot of. I love these hot, cold, warm.
Hot, warm, cool.
Hot, cold, lukewarm.
It's like your washing machine.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to think about this. It's because the cool is not off-putting. It's just sort of like normal, average.
Yeah.
Homeostasis.
Yep.
So
the last thing that hit me, and this may be because I'm a 1 coming to the topic, is that social atmospheres and groups are often unpredictable and not really under our control. Like social groups generally have kind of an energy that even the leader can't always, move the way that they want to. And sometimes we're like moving with the group, the dynamics of a group, the chemistry of a group just kind of take over. And it's like, where am I in this space?
Yeah.
And the thing that kept hitting me on this is that often in Enneagram, we talk about, the most basic idea is motive. What is your motive? I want to bring out an idea that I'm going to call trust, and it ends up being nearly identical to motive. And the idea would be this. When I'm in a social group, there's something that, even though the group itself is very in flux and not controllable, there's something I generally trust. And it's going to look a lot like my motive.
Yeah.
So 1s in a social group are going to trust in their personal principles and standards. It's just really common for Enneagram 1s. When they're in a group, things are moving. And when you need a little bit of stability, what are you going to push into? You're probably going to push into your principles. Here are the things that I believe. And that's going to help you navigate in that group.
Right.
Very different from 2s. I'll just go through this real quick, or maybe just for the first 4, since that's what we're talking about, and you'll get the idea. But 2s are going to be much more strategic in their relationships and their influence, and they trust that. They trust their ability to be strategic in relationships. I have given this to this person. Therefore, I can trust that in response, this person will give me something in return in the future. And I've established these relationships, and I can trust in what has been built there. Going to be very different from threes, who are going to just trust in their ability to achieve the thing and get recognized for it. I think that, like, again, as we come to the group itself, I think this is just in the back of our mind. It's, as a, well, this is the thing I have to rely on.
Mm-hmm.
It may even establish kind of the social role. The four is obviously going to trust in their emotional depth, their creativity, their ability to know themselves. That's what we're going to rely on when we're in the midst of the group, and we could quickly go, fives in their intellect, sixes in, trusting in the rules and the authority of figures. Sevens are going to push into positivity and freedom. Eights have that protective ability. And nines, you could probably maintain the harmony if things break. All of these things are places, long story short, in the group, there's something I trust in. I feel like that's going to color a lot of what I want to say when we come to those four big topics.
Sure. Yeah. I like that. Can you tell me one again?
On social ones, I think they're going to come to social engagements trusting in their personal principles. This is what I believe. This is what I think is good and right. You'll notice this with ones in groups. Like sometimes they'll kind of pause, this is the place we're going. And somebody says, but I don't work on Sundays. And that ends up influencing the social dynamic.
Yeah.
Or flip side, don't you think that we should do better with our recycling in this building? Don't you think that we could do better in terms of our energy consumption in this building? The principled side is going to come out. Whatever their principle ends up being will influence how they engage the group itself.
Right.
Bang.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of social ones,
let's do it.
I look at this list. I read this list to my wife. I was like, how many of these do you see in me? And about a third of them are the descriptions that I had written down. She's like, that's very much you. And 2/3, she's like, yeah, not so much.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so that kind of speaks to what we've been saying is I just don't shift into this gear very often.
Right.
And of all things, I don't shift into this gear very often around my spouse.
Right.
Normally when I'm in social gear, I'm at work where I'm not working with her.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so these elements don't come out, but I see them. And so...
And just as a special note on that particular point, it's really interesting to see your social instinct as a 1 competing with her social instinct as a 3 when you're in the same space.
Oh, there's no competition. There's dominance.
Yeah.
There's outsourcing, deferment.
One of you is the one in charge.
Like a lot of us who are in relationships, I bet you both partners in romantic relationships, I bet you it's uncommon to have both of them be highly social
Sure.
in their instinct.
Sure.
I bet you one person is much more social than the other.
Sure.
You kind of the nerd and the free spirit.
Right.
Well, let's get into this. What do you think about what hit you first with social ones?
Well, so we have a type that are sort of defined by their desire to be good and to be improving and to make things around them better and to find the problems and fix them. And when the social instinct is put on top of all of that, you have like the type of person who wants to show other people how to get better.
Mm-hmm.
You have a teacher, a mentor, a life coach, a financial advisor, whatever it is. Like when this social instinct is dominant, like there's a sense of like I know the right way, and I want to show you all what the right way is, so that we can all get better together.
I think that's right, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're the leader.
Right.
They might be the leader, and that's the position they take,
Mm-hmm.
but it can also be the person who is just part of the group and waiting for their moment to speak in exactly those ways.
And when it is not their moment to speak, they are leading by example.
Right.
Even if nobody cares about recycling, I will show you what it looks like to recycle by just doing it myself.
Right.
If this whole company isn't going to get on board, at least I will.
In fact, a big, when do you separate from a group?
Mm-hmm.
For the social one, it might be exactly on this front.
Right.
They have some principles or they have some behaviors and postures that I just can't be a part of this.
Right.
And move on
Yeah.
for those reasons.
And I have tried to change the culture here, and it didn't work. And so I can't see myself being a part of this group and maintaining my own integrity.
Yep. That's what validation, just to skip ahead, is probably going to look like. Do people listen to the principles and targets that I'm elevating?
Right.
And that, because that's going to be, in large part, that's probably going to be their contribution.
Right. Yeah. Almost in a way that, like, these types might see themselves as the moral compass of the group or organization.
Yeah. Yeah. And some organizations really want that.
Right.
Will you come in and do this heavy lifting for us? We really need to have some direction here.
Right.
And some aren't.
And some aren't. And some even are there. Like, there are organizations whose core values are not worthwhile values necessarily. Like, they're obviously they're worthwhile to someone, because that if an organization has those core values, somebody said this is something we should value. But when ones are at the table in those settings, like, there's a desire to push for what they think is right.
Yep. And
to get other people on board with that.
This whole list, people were popping in my mind in terms of who is this person. And there's a whole list of folks who I think have this dynamic. So a non-moral, one person that commonly comes to my mind when speaking about ones is Steve Jobs. But notice his passion for ideals isn't necessarily moral.
Right.
It's rounded corners and rectangles. It's a closed system. It's, I mean, it is moral in the sense that he doesn't want IBM to take over the world.
Right.
But
also, like, he wants, like, he refused to allow anything be created that made things harder. Like that marked his tenure toward like the changing the world decades of Apple, is that, like, everything that we do should be user friendly. Yeah.
Beauty, simplicity.
Yep.
And he wants to be on the front side of the revolution, whatever that's going to be.
Right.
You need to think different.
Yep. And notice, because he's at the helm, he gets to change the entire organization to be like that.
Right. Not all social ones are going to be leading the organization, but that would be what the organization looks like under the leadership of a social one.
Right.
And and then all of those ideals kind of get passed to the troops, as it were.
Yeah. And regardless of what you think about Steve Jobs' ideals, notice also that the iPhone and the iPad and all of the things, when these were, like, changing the world while Steve Jobs was still alive, guess how many color options we had?
One.
None. There that just wasn't part of the figuring.
Yep.
It's to, like, give people all these expressive opportunities and, like, pick your red one, pick your purple one. And now it's a commonplace with every new issuance. It's like, how many colors are there? And part of that is because Steve Jobs was certain that he knew what you needed.
Yep. Yeah. You have famously, he said, you have two options: buy it or don't.
Yep. and I say what you want about whether that's the right move or not. It worked for him.
Yeah.
While he was doing it.
And it routinely competes to be the most valuable company in the world alongside NVIDIA and Microsoft right now.
Right.
Another person who's more moral on this front would be like a Captain America. We need to, if we're going to fight these huge fights, we can't do them in city environments because there's so many, there's so much collateral damage becomes a huge part of that storyline in the Marvel storytelling. Yeah. Which he's very convinced of.
Yeah. And thinking about the MCU's version of Civil War, that's all about, like, the three wants to be part of the world's solution and, like, whatever it takes for you all to be okay with us again.
Right.
And the one says we cannot give up control of ourselves because we might need to be the ones in control of ourselves. Yeah. Like, there's an idealistic vision. And again, whether you think it's right or not, like, this is a great example of a one not being able to bend their own principles
Mm-hmm.
in order to go along with the group.
Or even on this front, Captain America has a terrible experience of being under wicked leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And now his principles adjust, and now nobody's trustworthy
Yeah.
at those levels.
Yeah.
And so if he's going to lead the team, it's going to look like this.
Right.
Exactly as you're saying. We're not giving our power away. Anyway, you'll notice principles. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
really helpful here.
Yep.
Second big idea would be that of boundaries and contributions. As we were kind of saying, what is it that the one is contributing? But a lot of ones will think that it is their job to do all the things.
Yeah.
Ones are one of the types that really struggle with the off button.
Yeah. There is work that needs to be done, and somebody needs to do it, and nobody's doing it right now, so I'll do it.
Yeah.
Because it's more important that this work gets done than I have the appropriate amount of rest, or that someone else, like, if the whole organization suffers because one person isn't doing their job, then it's like, on principle, it's almost better to pick up the slack than to advocate for the firing of that one person, you know?
And obviously one's coming to an organization or a job, they've selected probably a job that they have some strong ideals concerning.
Yeah.
It's not like you're just finding the job. It's oftentimes the one is probably going to have some buy-in in terms of what this organization is about, what this community is about.
Right.
And so why wouldn't you give your one and only life and all of your energy to the endeavors, of this group?
Yeah.
And that is a quick recipe for getting fried.
Yep. You say that like you speak from experience.
I have known nothing about this. This is all intuitional. I just assume. How do you balance? How do you push into this is what is reasonable, wise, thoughtful? You'll notice the repressed center being challenged here.
Yeah.
If you were to think about what your best contributions are for both the group and yourself, what would that look like? And it's very seldom the case that ones embrace moderation as a high virtue.
Right.
But that is a virtue, so said Aristotle. And well worth, consistently challenging, how do I balance here?
Yeah. And I think with ones in particular, it's also like the, let's say, sensitivity to other people not pulling their weight.
Mm-hmm.
That while that's there, with this social instinct propelling them forward, like whatever that judgment isn't helping the group. Doing the work helps the group.
Right.
Like, we need to move this thing forward. And for the one, typically, we need to move it forward the way that I think it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody isn't doing this part the way that I think it should be, well, I'm going to step in and take care of that.
Yep. This is where resentment lives. I am commonly, as TJ will know, when people bring up resentment in ones, I'm like, kinda. I sort of feel that, but here's the thing: I'm just really low on how often I push into this social gear.
Yeah,
like I don't thrive in that space very often.
Right.
So I want to be in control of my space. And here's the thing about being in control of my space is I'm not dependent on other people.
Right.
For the most part. So there's nobody to be resentful toward. But if you're a social one and other people aren't keeping up, especially when you selected this is the right organization and ours is the place that is doing meaningful work in the world.
Yeah.
And you're not dedicated at the level I am.
Yeah.
There's resentment. I'm making everything about myself today.
Just while we're on the ones, it's
Just
fine.
Missed my therapy session. Apparently it's all about me.
There you go.
Actually, TJ is my therapist. This is how this works. Why the hell do you think we do a podcast? It's not for you guys.
This is Jeff's therapy.
This is just so that I get some free therapy.
And there are people listening thinking, don't you guys just hang out? Like, couldn't you just do that over beers?
We could. TJ is a 4-year-old.
Oh, yeah, that. Preschool starts next week.
Woo! Life changer.
Oh, my gosh. I'm so excited.
All the parents will celebrate with you there. Just say, yep,
Yeah.
been there.
Yeah.
Third is the strategic element. The black and white thinking of ones make this real tricky at times.
And there's a big picture planning combined with the attention to detail that exists within ones that can also turn the social instinct against them because now they're seeing people not as people, but as cogs within the machine that is the group or the organization or the family or whatever it is. Like the one's ability to sort of detach themselves from the emotional aspect of those interactions. Like it would be very easy for a social one to not really view people as people, but as different aspects of contribution toward a common goal.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That's gonna come in, especially if you're solving problems.
Yep.
Because ones are gonna shut down their emotional center in solving problems.
Yeah. And it with ones, it can, like, the social one, that turn can be really interesting because it can look really callous if you see it.
Right.
But again, we have to remember that the ones are striving for an ideal. They're striving for a better world, a better organization. They want you to be better, even while they're sort of dismissing your humanity and reducing you to your contribution. They want you to be better because if your contribution was better, then you would thrive, right?
This is really why I wanted to push that trust image up front. The one is trusting in their principles, and they've invested in the organization, the society they think is best, and they're willing to push all in,
right,
at cost to themselves with no boundaries.
Yep.
And here's the turn. They expect you to do the same and to have the same mindset, and that's the problem.
And at cost to themselves includes some of their own relationships.
Oh, yeah.
If this thing gets better, but you hate me because of how I pushed you, but this thing still gets better, I'm okay with you hating me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's someday I would love to go through the Steve Jobs movie with Fassbender, but there's a scene of essentially that sort where like this revolutionary Apple performance thing gets done by a specific engineer who goes down in history because of this contribution.
Right.
And he confronts Jobs about how he was threatened, how he was, essentially Jobs was going to stand on a stage and say the thing that didn't work was Joe over here who screwed it up. Yeah. And Jobs goes, "It worked, didn't it?" And he goes, "Yeah." He's like, "You don't need to thank me." You know, it's kind of that. I got you where you needed to be. And what do you think we're doing here?
Right.
The world is shifting on its axis with the release of this $3,000 box.
Right.
is his way of thinking about the world.
Right.
And you're exactly right. Run people over. Strategic, I think, is going to be principally driven. Who are the people I can align myself with who share my values is probably going to be a huge element here.
Yeah. And because of the oneness, it is unlikely that they are questioning their values in that space.
Right.
It's more likely that they're already sure what their values are, and they're trying to figure out if you're sure of their values.
Yeah. This is where I meant to say this earlier, but the ones who actually are emotionally restrained are probably social ones. Or really push into this gear. For this reason, they know that if they actually give their candid opinion, it will cause some conflict.
Right. It'll change the dynamics.
So when folks talk about ones who withhold in these spaces, I suppose the self-pres instinct can do this as well, but that's what's going on there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And pointing to the, like, thinking of the self-preservation instincts, the one who's withholding is protecting themselves. Thinking of the social instinct, the one who's withholding is protecting the group. It's the same thing, but it's like, look how the energy moves it.
Yeah. protecting the group dynamics. If I speak into this situation, it's going to just pull the conversation a different direction.
Yeah.
I heard one Enneagram 1 leader who, in essence, was told, when you speak in our meetings, your words weigh 1,000 pounds. And that's, in essence, how that can go.
Mm-hmm.
Lastly is the need for validation. I again want to tie this to the contribution ones often make. Like, here's what I'm offering, and it gets celebrated or it doesn't.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And you know that you're loved and wanted if people say, hey, this thing that you bring matters.
Right. And there's always an idealized tension here, because the one doesn't want to be praised because it's not about them and that's inappropriate, but they want people to recognize their contribution. There's this like tension going on for them because they need that from the group. They need the group to recognize the things that they've done for the group, the moral weight that they bring, the active accomplishing of tasks and order that they bring to the group. They need the group to recognize that, but they definitely don't want to ask for it because that's inappropriate, right?
Sure.
And yeah, they have to walk that tension. So if you know social ones and you haven't told them that they're doing a good job lately, maybe go tell them they're doing a good job.
And don't expect them to say much.
Right.
It means a lot and they won't tell you.
Yep. But because they are, like, with that social instinct being dominant, when that thing is active, part of how they understand themselves is their place within the group, and the group needs to recognize their place in it in order to have validation.
Mm-hmm. I mean, often you're going to see that, though, in terms of what a one is willing to advocate for, which will probably come out in their language socially.
Mm-hmm.
So in atmosphere, so like when I was working at the university, one of the big things I wanted was more majors. I wanted to have a larger program that could afford an adjunct full-time faculty member. I had a very selfish reason. And while I was there, the program size doubled. Nobody cared.
Yeah.
And they didn't adjust.
Yeah.
And when it was actually brought up in conversation, I had like fellow faculty who were actively trying to get rid of majors in our program, partially because it meant a whole lot more work for them.
Right.
But for me, that's like just symbols of success. You're being fruitful in the world. You know, I suppose I'm a builder.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an entrepreneur. I want some energy from things taking off.
Right.
No validation there.
Yeah.
So,
and for those listening, I hope that you tuned into the same thing that I heard, which is that there is a complicated interactive nature between what the one needs for themselves and what they want for what they envision for the greater organization.
mm-hmm.
Like there's so much there that is about creating a spot for you to be there, right? You can't deny that that's part of your motivation, because the fact that you recognize it means you have to say it out loud. But also, the organization succeeding is good for everyone. It provides a space for me, but it's actually good for everyone.
What I hear there is exactly what we've been talking about. It's the conversation between the social instinct and the self-preservation instinct. So, I mean, I can live in a box and teach.
Right.
You know, if I'm that committed to the project.
Right.
So, but of all things, I'm taking this position in part because I think this is a place that my best energies can go, and it can both provide me a basic income and fulfill all these ambitions I have professionally.
Right. And make the department better, make the university better, make the students better, thereby making the world better.
Right. So, and I mean, all jobs are like that. You got to, for ones in particular, like the idea that like you have some ideals that you want to accomplish, you are not going to have any lack on that front.
Right.
It's how do you pay for these ideals is going to be your problem, you know? So you may really think that the rainforests need to no longer get chopped down. There's not a lot of economic incentive to fighting large organizations that are chopping down rainforests.
Right.
So how are you going to do it? So for me, and I suppose a secondary thing here is that it became real clear that out of this experience, the validation I was seeking was a sign this isn't a good place for me.
Right.
And I think we're going to see this over and again when we get to validation. It's sometimes you have to say, oh, you all are not interested in me sticking around, are you?
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It might be a bad fit.
And I would also point to, like, your social instinct, I think, becomes active while you're in the classroom.
Okay.
But not necessarily while you're in the department.
Yeah, it's more like department meetings.
Yeah.
Like you gotta, that's the gear that you have to kind of shift into. Yeah. If you're in a business meeting like that.
But I think, like, this is a good place to point to, like, you were a really good teacher and you had regular reviews acknowledging from the students that you were a really good teacher, and you crafted your classrooms in a way that pointed to a lot of the things that we talk about with social ones, and group inclusion, and making sure that everyone is able to speak if they want to, and drawing people forward in a way that helps them think better. And that spot you're naturally good at. Navigating the dynamics of the department and working for the university and all of that stuff sucks. And your social instinct didn't naturally come out in that space. So it didn't serve you in the same way.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is one of those places you have a dominant instinct and you have weaker instincts.
Yeah.
Like I'm just not as socially intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually one of the primary reasons I get into Enneagram. It gives me something, to work with here.
Right.
We have spoken about this in the past, but for some of us who are very low in our social instinct, we realize everybody else is playing a game that we don't understand very well.
Right.
And we're trying to keep up.
Mm-hmm.
And the best that we can do is kind of push into, maybe this is why that list of trust kind of elevates for me. It's like we push into the thing that we trust.
Right.
Because this can be so complex, messy, and sometimes you're just not thriving there. So
right.
And
you're playing checkers and the people next to you are playing 3D Star Trek chess.
That's right. And that's great. You know how I solve this?
How?
I married a woman who's brilliant on these fronts, and
there you go.
I just outsource all
Perfect.
that. Social twos.
Social twos.
What are your thoughts on twos who push hard into their social instinct?
The twoist of two-ness, the social instinct, dominant in a entirely social person.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who views their worth based on how they are connected to other people. When their instinct is about how they are connected to other people, like that. This is a spot where like twos being twos, like that comes real prominent here because of the social instinct.
Twos shifting into the social instinct always strike me as those who are playing that game at a real high level. There is a lot of tit for tat going on. There is a lot of positioning, but it's often exceedingly well hidden for the most part, or even like their presence in one's life can even appear like just a massive gift in what they've done for me in the past.
Yeah.
To where I didn't even understand that, there was actually something going on inside the two that was, I really need to ensure that, all these relational dynamics are taken care of for the future.
Right.
Potentially.
Yeah. This is the one that makes me think of Professor Slughorn from Harry Potter.
Oh.
He doesn't show up until the 6th book, but he's presented as this fat old man who likes to surround himself with really nice things and opulence.
Okay.
And he has strategic relationships. So that I think that at some point in the books it describes him as an oversized spider who knows which string to pull on to get what he wants. Like there's an idea of connectedness here that is like, it's strategic in nature. It is all about making sure that you have the right people to accomplish the thing that you need in any given situation. Like you've ingratiated yourself in such a way to where like you're almost like you're at the center of this complicated web of people who are going to do all the things for you.
Big element here is that twos are going to be the most socially aware.
Mm-hmm.
So much of their energy is going outward, and it's pointed at your heart.
Right.
Like, how are you feeling? I will understand that.
Right.
And then,
Or I already understand that, and I'm offering you the thing that you need.
yeah, and there becomes, and that can get phrased kind of as a negative. I don't think it necessarily has to be a negative. This may be, twos who are highly socially aware and shift into this gear can do quite a bit to shore up the rest of us in the group context.
Right. Right. The socially aware, interconnected two can see all of the things that the group needs.
Mm-hmm.
Can see all the ways that people need to be taken care of. Like here's this weak spot in the group. What can I do in that corner to shore up this section? And like, what does that person need in order for them to get better, to contribute more? And in that way, sort of like making sure that they get taken care of as well. So long as the group is taken care of, then the group will take care of me.
Yeah, I suppose lastly, one of the notes I had said strategic giving, which kind of builds on that. There is, again, that just socially, I'm aware of how this game is played.
Yeah.
I'm jumping forward to kind of the strategic elements and don't mean to, but that's really what it is. I mean, there can be in social atmospheres, it's just the gear that is shifted into.
Right.
The second would be, and this is really worth talking about with twos, is the balancing of group need and personal need.
Mm-hmm.
And here we're going to have tons to talk about in terms of how twos come to the world. But the personal needs, very similar to the ones, often get sliced for the sake of just overemphasis on the group needs.
Right. It's almost a like sacrificing my needs now to take care of your needs now so that you can take care of my needs later.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, I also think of like the frat mom or like I'm not a two, but I resonate with a lot of sort of aspects of two-ness, and there was a period of time where like I was the group dad, I was the one that like could tell when other people were down or needed some money, or like here's you haven't eaten in a couple of hours, let me get you some food. Like there's an aspect of like that sort of awareness of everyone else, and for twos who are naturally gifted and like their natural behavior is about filling other people's needs.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you see anyone within the group that needs something, you're going to take care of it.
Yep.
And it's really easy for twos to not have a sense of their own boundaries. So like that includes giving too much of myself away. That includes taking too much on from someone else. Like that, the group's needs are always more important than my own.
Yep. Two things here. I think that's exactly right. It's like this person is the contributor, and often like just a lot of the contribution energy comes here of this service energy.
Yeah.
The thing that was hitting me on balancing group and personal needs ends up being this is where repressed thinking really lives for twos, because what will happen is the unproductive thinking of twos comes into play twofold. One, it's overthinking everyone else and what they're thinking about you.
Yeah.
And just going into outlandish thought and detail about how other people perceive you and how interactions have gone. And nearly zero energy toward the two dictum, which is what is mine to do.
Right.
And what is your place? How are you feeling? Etc.
Yeah. And I would want to add some finer nuance to that and suggest that like that the way that pride lives in this space for the two, the social instinct elevates pride because it doubles down on unproductive thinking. And I think that if twos aren't aware of that, then they should be. Like they should do good work to become aware of that,
Yeah.
because this is one of the places where pride can be more visible.
Yeah. This is a rut that you get in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Clearly I'm the solution. Clearly I'm the solution.
Right.
Kind of
And failing to acknowledge your own needs while expecting that the group that you have put so much, I have done so much for you, why aren't you taking care of me?
Mm-hmm.
Like that can be much more visible in the social instinct.
That is where this, to jump forward, the strategic side really can come into play. If you really
Mhm.
believe that, then how do I adapt and perform
Yeah.
in this space? I'm reading your energy. I'm reading your emotions. I'm looking for the places where my contribution will be received,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the game I'm playing.
Right.
Anything else on the strategic or on the balancing side?
I think we can also see that sort of unbalance pretty prominently in the ability for twos to, let's say, advocate for the betterment of others,
Right.
like advocating for the needs of someone else, advocating for the needs of someone else even in their own life. Like, you need to take care of yourself. I see that you're exhausted. You need to go home and get some sleep. I'll work for you. I'll work this shift for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like the imbalance of the ferocity with which twos will take care of others in the group versus the inattention to their own needs is a huge place of imbalance within this.
Yep. Part of that, I suppose, skipping ahead then, is about how twos are validated.
Mm-hmm.
There is the unconscious strategy that if I meet your needs, you're going to meet my needs.
Yep.
And so,
And also the awareness, maybe not consciously, that I have met your needs without you needing to tell me directly what they are.
mm-hmm.
And don't you have that same sense of my needs?
Yep. Love others the way you want to be loved. Kind of,
Right.
There is an expectation there. There also lies resentment,
Yeah.
for the two. It's a different style of resentment from the one, in that this person doesn't have the ability to understand who I am and what I need and desire.
Right.
If they loved me, they would do X, Y, and Z, because I clearly have sought to love them.
Right.
To push into trust again here, it's my needs don't need to get addressed because I have a trust in my influence in these relationships I've cultivated, and so my needs will get taken care of.
Yep.
By the
Yeah, I've
people
cultivated all these relationships in such a way that there's someone on the end of each string that will take care of my needs when I need them.
To land here, the Stabile's question, what is mine to do, that she holds as a two, ends up being wisdom for repressed thinking twos, because it should invite the how do I care for myself as well.
Mm-hmm.
What is balanced energy being poured into the group look like,
Right.
both for the sake of others and for myself.
Yeah.
Because it's none of these things are bad. Shifting into the social gear for the two is absolutely not bad, and often a lot of the best contributions that are made by twos are in this space.
Mm-hmm.
But it needs to be thoughtful.
Yeah.
And it needs to, thoughtful giving needs to have a common understanding that pride can really poison this.
Right. Right.
as
Yeah, there's a humility that comes with
Yeah,
thoughtfulness
There you go.
that can be vital for some twos.
Mm-hmm. I think that's worth really sitting on. Twos are going to earn the attention that they desire,
Mm-hmm.
and coloring that as best as possible with what does it look like to be humble in that posture.
Right.
It's a good meditation.
Yeah.
Turn to the threes. When threes shift into that social gear, what does this look like?
Well, here we have another very prominent and visible type. I love that we, like, except for one, I love that we started this with the three the heart types, because there's a social awareness that's just built into 2s, 3s, and 4s.
Yep.
And when you apply the social instinct, when you put it on top of that social awareness with 3s, then there becomes this like striving for excellence within the organization that also gets pushed into everyone else.
Right.
And there's an adaptability within the social instinct, because I'm going to change my position based on what's needed for the group, right? And then you bring in the adaptability of 3s that already exists and put that adaptability piece on top of it, and you have this ever-changing, like, 3s are going to become whatever is needed for the success of the larger group that they're a part of. And that can be the leader, that can be someone who provides the snacks, that can be the emotional guru for everyone else who's kind of like struggling with their own emotional space in the group. So like 3s want the group to thrive, and they will fill those needs wherever they are.
Yep. It's worth saying, I liked where you started there. When we were talking about pairing sexual dynamics with the types, for 6s, the sexual pairing gear is going to balance them. So they come across as the counter type, because this is actually a place they're balancing. And then when we talked about 7s, we were like 7s shifting into the pairing sexual type. This is an amplifier.
Yeah.
That's what's going on here for the 2s, 3s, and 4s, and in part, like the amplification, maybe not for 4s, but 2s and 3s, I think for sure. Like when 2s and 3s shift into their social instinct, it's ratcheting up something, doubling down on this part of themselves.
Right.
I want to talk about 3s, emotional sensitivity and awareness.
Yeah, I think that this is one of the places where we see. I feel like this is one of the places where the emotional sensitivity of 3, like the awareness that they bring to the table, is a little bit more visible, but that's not necessarily a good thing, because 3s want to appear successful and praiseworthy at all costs, right? So like it's possible that the social awareness of the 3 recognizes who needs to be left behind in order for the group to be successful.
Yep.
That's not always the case, but it can be. And like pivoting to like what things need to be shored up, what places need to, and it's all relational, right? Because this social instinct is like it's a social and relational filter. There's an element of like figuring out what places need to be elevated and what places need to be adjusted in order for the success and efficiency of the group. Like, how do we get the group to function in the best way? We want to address all of those loose ends.
Yeah, the thing I hear here, again, I've been talking about this kind of as a game, but very much for 3s. There is a goal here, and the goal is to win. And I'm reading you in order to understand who you are, your value, if you're worthy of my time. And if you are, there's only one question, is how do I gain your attention?
Right.
And how do I establish a relationship that has some girth, some body, and can be relied on in the future to make me look a certain way in the context of the rest of the group?
Right. And does the group have a worthwhile and achievable goal? If it doesn't, I'll give you one.
Yeah. So twofold there. I think that ends up bleeding into if the 3 is the leader, for sure, how do we look?
Yeah.
Is going to become dominant.
Yeah.
What's the face we're putting forth? Are we seen as successful?
Right.
There's a lot of social 3s that I think are not actually the leaders in this sense.
Right.
A lot of times in America, you can see 3s rising to places of leadership, often in these ways, in those places where image really matters. Hollywood, politics, some elements of sport. certainly business, if you're trying to, you have to, gain capital. And so your ability to sell the thing that you're doing and pitch the image, that, there's layers of that sort.
Yeah.
A lot of social threes can also be, the second in command, third in, in line. And they are, again, the people in the organization are, how do I succeed in areas that they care about? Because I read their emotions, what they care about, what they value, and I'm going to dominate in those spaces.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to convincingly entice them to align with my goals. So, like, you can't be the leader and always be changing faces with all the different parts. Like, there's
Sure.
This is one of the reasons that social threes don't necessarily rise to those prominent leader positions as much, because rising to the leader position is a different form of achievement.
Mm-hmm.
But if your goal is for the group to get better, then it's actually easier to do that in the shadows. And by in the shadows, I mean in a way where you can be different things to different people.
People who are leaders in those spaces often are going to, there's a lot of reframing and disseminating, and you didn't see what you think you saw. Like we were amazing, going on.
Yeah.
This again, a type that's going to struggle with personal boundaries.
Yep.
A lot of energy towards the goal, and the goal is winning.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is one of the real benefits that threes have, is their stress number is a place of stopping. So you're moving into 9 space, and a lot of threes may get a chance to shore themselves up when they push into 9.
Take a nap.
But
and this is one of the places where, like, the social 3, it's the social instinct on the 3, like it means that they're always on. You know, they're always performing, they're always adjusting, they're always contributing, because that's how you are successful, right? Like, why? Look at the entire history of the world. The successful people are the ones who worked hard, right? And so we work hard to achieve our goals. And because of the social instinct, we're always aware of everyone else as well.
Yeah.
Threes, when this social instinct is really prominent, they just don't turn off.
Correct.
Yeah.
2s and 3s, their fear is real similar here. 2s don't want to be unwanted, and 3s don't want to be seen as unsuccessful or as failures.
Mm-hmm.
The motive underlying both those is the same. You're going to get kicked off the island,
Right.
If you're a failure, you're not welcome here. And so 3s that are part of a group often can, rev this engine up.
Right.
They're reading what the group needs and then seeking to make the most meaningful contribution they can in that space.
Right.
The adaptability comes in here.
And there's a struggle with figuring out how to say no, how to turn that off.
Right. Yeah. The common, is it a, is it a sign of success for me to take a weekend to myself?
No, of course not. That means you're not dedicated.
Yeah. I need permission to see the weekend as a success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Again, I just want to emphasize the eye for the contribution is really strong here. That, again, 3 is a heart type, reading the emotions of others in order to understand, here's what's required of me.
Yeah.
And
I think that the idea of it being strategic is also a really important part for 3s.
Yeah, let's pivot there. Go ahead.
Because 3s are strategic anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you've spent your life learning how to be very good at things, and that means that you don't do things that you're bad at, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's an element of strategic positioning within 3s because they want to be seen as successful.
Mm-hmm.
So they're moving toward things where people will see them as successful, and that means getting good at those things and also not doing things that people can see you fail at. And so the strategic contributions is like like there's a really strong element of like making sure that you are contributing the right things to these places, because if you screw that up, then it will be visible.
Yep. The one line I had down for this is relationship management.
Mm-hmm.
And the the tools employed, the energy employed to ensure that all of the desirable relationships are fed what is required to keep them fed, it ends up mattering.
Mm-hmm.
So gifts given, notes of here's why I'm important to this sphere and this sphere and this sphere. That's going to be top shelf on, on the mind of threes.
Right.
The podcast we listened to, or I don't know if you heard the Art of Growth guys on this front, but there was the idea of setting reminders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To check in with key people.
Yeah.
And this is a thing.
Yeah. And I'd love to draw a contrast between that and what we assume from a 2. Like I assume a 2 hearing that a 3 sets reminders to check in with people that could respond with a, what you have to set reminders to check in with the people that are important to you. Like, isn't that like a 2 might see that as almost offensive, and a 3 sees that as like you are creating a system by which you maintain relationship, and you do it in the most efficient way possible.
Great.
Now, I don't have to remember to check in with Sally every 2 weeks, and I don't have to put forth effort to check in with Sally every 2 weeks because my phone reminds me to do that. And now I can spend that energy on something else to help me move forward some more.
That's correct. I suppose I'd build on that only in that the thing about having it on the calendar or on the phone or whatever is, in essence, it's check markable.
Yes.
And let me tell you about the check mark in the life of a 3.
I accomplished this to-do list item.
That would be...
Yeah.
Last thing on strategic side of coming to the world is that 3s are highly adaptable.
Yeah.
And who do you need me to be? If
Yeah.
you're important, then that's the question.
Right.
Or if you're the one whose favor and attention I crave most, that's the question.
Yeah. Yeah. Who do you need me to be? 2s ask, what do you need from me? 3s ask, who do you need me to be?
And I suppose I'm saying this in almost a pairing way. The social 3 is going to ask that of the organization.
Right.
So it will be a social question at that level.
Right. What role do I need to fill in the group?
And so it's both it's both the attention of the group matters and the attention of those outside the group matters in a different kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
And how the 3 gains the attention of those inside and makes the rest of the crew look amazing to those outside, that's different. So say you're the quarterback of a football team, it's one thing to get the rest of your your fellow players to give their energy to you. It's another thing to win the championship.
Yeah.
And to see yourself as part of a successful, organization.
Right. Right. And the winning of the championship is still really important, but the social instinct is going to push that 3 into making sure that the team is really good.
Yep.
The other instincts may not do that much legwork there.
It's where the feeling repression may come in here. You already kind of hinted at it, but if you're not keeping up and the social 3 says us winning is the most important thing, you might be the target of getting, kicked off the island.
Right. And it's not because we don't like you. It's because the organization is more important than you.
And the 3 is going to make that divorce as pleasant as possible.
Yep. Winning. They're going to convince you that you don't want to play football anymore.
I want you to think I'm amazing while I show you the door.
Yep.
A last thing here on the strategy and social awareness is it seems to me that the threes in that social gear might, very similar to ones, may not show you who they are.
Yeah.
And
because who they are underneath the mask doesn't matter.
yeah, it's for a different reason.
Yeah.
The one may think they're going to just overwhelm the space if they come out and tell you their powerful ideals. That's not where the three's at. Three's not going to show you who they are because there's going to be a lot of insecurities there, perhaps. There might be some, what do you call that, the imposter syndrome going on.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and I also think that I can very reasonably understand a 3 in the social space saying that there's no good reason to show the inner life because it doesn't help the group achieve the goals.
Goes back to what they trust in. They are trusting their ability to achieve.
Yep.
Your inner life doesn't matter. It is
doesn't matter.
This is a performance business, y'all.
Yep.
That can be a very, by the way, threes, that could be a very deadly road. Just in case you didn't catch the undercurrent of this may not end the way you think it will.
Yeah. When you can change all of your spoken values in order to take control of a group because all you want is to be in charge of the group, then let me rephrase that. Because all you want is the acclaim of being in charge of a group, then that can end very badly.
You're going to end up being a person in a costume in front of everybody hating your life.
Yeah.
You're eventually going to say, I don't even like these people. Where do we go wrong here? Yeah. Speaking of which, are there unhealthy forms of validation?
I mean, that feels to me like a stupid question.
Are there?
There are no stupid questions, right? Except for that one.
Setting up the next question, which would be, are there healthy forms of validation?
Yes.
And
there are. And there are certainly unhealthy forms as well.
This is a challenge.
Yeah. I think that, like, threes in the social instinct are probably, like, these are the threes that look like how we just describe threes, right? And there's
titles, awards, degrees,
etc. Some type of like social marker to say this is what I have achieved so far. I have this degree. I have this title. I won this award. I am celebrated in this way for my accomplishments. Like they're like holding up that image is very common and easy to fall into with the social instinct because you need validation for what you've brought to the group.
Right. And it seems to me that this is one of those places you just have to do work and say, what are the healthy marks of validation? Let me restate that. This is one of the places that you really need to do work, where you're writing down true worthy validation looks like this, and these other symbols, though they may feel great, are not the validation that I require, that I should require. How would I want to say that? It might be fantastic to get certain awards because they obviously have that surge of acclaim and attention and winning.
Right.
And I don't even want to say at what cost. That's a whole nother question. But sometimes you're chasing an award from people you don't respect, don't care for their opinion, and the service done, the battle won, was worthless.
Right.
Well,
and there's a lot to be said about like how many awards are political or like public perception. There are so many quote unquote awards out there that do not go to the person that deserves it the most because this other person getting it would look better. It's so much about what awards is about appearance. And so if you are stuck in this cycle of needing awards to know who you are, but you change your personality in order to get the awards, then eventually you'll figure out that you're not a person. You're a shell with a bunch of awards attached to it.
Right. No, that's in essence where I'm trying to go. Like the example that is coming to my mind is there are certain things, they're not necessarily awards, but they're validation that my oldest child can give to my wife that are truly valuable.
Yeah.
In terms of their growing up, their thankfulness at her constant vigilance as a mom versus, sales award X from company Y,
Right.
validation comes in all shapes and sizes, but really knowing these are treasures and these are pieces of plastic that will sit on your shelf for the next 15 years.
Right.
Those are very, very different.
Yeah.
Bang. 4 is shifting into the social gear. I didn't know where to land earlier, but why don't you tell us what the story is with
This is a good one because in 2s and 3s you see like the social dial turned up, but when you get to 4s, you leaning on the social instinct. That's not necessarily what happens,
right?
but their ability to read social situations becomes much stronger, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And like the circle expands. It doesn't change much because 4s are still very self-involved is the wrong word. 4s, they are very concerned with their own inner life, and when you enlarge the circle, they're still very concerned with their inner life, but now the circle is larger. So they are concerned with their place in the group. They are concerned with how other people feel about them, how they feel about other people. Like what is the group accomplishing? What is the group aiming for? But it still has so much to do with their own inner life that it's not necessarily pushing into others the way that 2s and 3s will.
Emotional sensitivity seems to me to go both ways here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And one of the real struggles, I suppose, I want to put my thumb on with 4s is comparison.
Yeah.
And if they're social 4s, that probably is really going to be a strong element to their personality.
Mm-hmm.
There was one note that I read about 4s in this gear saying they often appear sweet, friendly, and soft, but often can be the most melancholy.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose that pinged for me as being true here.
Yeah.
So this isn't the hot sexual 4.
Right.
The pairing 4. That I'm gonna find the one person. This is the 4 in the social sphere who really is comfortable and thriving in that space.
Mm-hmm. And putting a lot of their energy into making a space where the group is emotionally stable and invested.
Yes.
But that can be at their own expense. Like that like the person you just described who seems very like sweet and engaged and like peppy even, but on the inside they're actually the most melancholy. The idea being that like the energy that they are putting out is for the good of the group, and they are comfortable feeling outside of that.
I think that's exactly
like
right.
almost like this isn't for me and that's okay kind of way. Yeah,
that's exactly right. Because on one side they understand their own uniqueness in that sphere.
Yeah.
So that may come out in how they dress, how they posture. This probably comes out, we've talked about leaders quite a bit, but the social 4 leader probably will show you quite a bit of who this person is in terms of the priorities that they would bring to the community. So even a social 4 parent, in terms of what are the conversations around the table going to look like?
Yeah.
What's going to get emphasized? The coolness will absolutely be there. In fact, like arguably the most cool of all the cool people is like social 4s may be this person. waiting for their opportunity to bring out just all the colors that are that we could engage together as a group.
Highly in tune with what they perceive is everyone else's emotional space.
Right. I think that's why the sweet, friendly, soft may be there, in that they are very in tune with everybody else's emotional space and with their own.
Yeah.
And just waiting for the opportunity to play that card.
Right.
And it's not going to be, again, it's not going to be individual. It's going to be, let's pull everybody into the space.
And I think there's a individual / group tension that fours handle really well, because they create a space. Like, part of their role in the group is creating a space for the emotional honesty of everyone in the group. But that energy is not being spent in the group necessarily. Like, it's about providing the space for all of the individuals to be individuals all together.
Yep.
Like, it's this weird both and thing that fours are naturally good at holding.
Yeah, because the emotional life of other people really matter. And if we could get to that spot collectively, that would be the win, yeah?
Right.
Or a win.
And when everyone is free to be themselves, the whole thing is better.
Yeah. Create spaces for expression.
Yeah.
And in so doing, the social four likewise gets to express themselves in a place where that's allowed.
Right. Right. If everyone fits, then I fit too.
It's again I want to push into trust here. Trust, fours are going to trust their own emotional life, its depth, and their own creativity. Finding a social space where you can engage that gear, that's going to be required.
Right.
If you can't, this is one of those places where, fours often may leave.
Right. They'll want to find the other people in the group who feel the same way. Because if they do, and no one else feels the same way, then obviously we're out. We have to leave. But if there are other people that feel the same way, then maybe something needs to be adjusted,
Yeah, then you have a little subgroup.
Yeah.
That would
You're trying to find your people.
Yeah. And that, in fact, would be perhaps where the social four is really going to thrive. It's not in the larger, like, school body.
Right.
But Smoker's Corner, man, that's all you.
Right. Right. Or whatever it is, the space where you can provide the opportunity for individuals to be individuals within a group context. Fours are going to be awesome at that.
Yeah. The art room at the school is going to be, here's a space, the drama club. Yeah. This is our space, etc. What do boundaries look like for this type?
Well, I think that, like, we already kind of talked about one of the big things about boundaries is that fours perceive their, just like every type, like, the way that I see the world is the way that everyone sees the world, right? So fours perceive their own depth in others. They may perceive their own sort of, like, broader emotional space as being the way that other people are. So if I come into work and I'm, kind of in a bad mood, I might see other people, the way that other people behave, representing a bad mood as well. If I come in and I'm in a good mood, I might see other people's behavior as representing a good mood as well. I think that fours don't draw great boundaries around emotional space to say, this is mine and this is yours. And this social instinct makes those lines even harder to create because it's all about us.
That's where my mind goes also, is boundaries might be acknowledging not everyone can go there in terms of your capacity for emotional depth and expression.
Right.
The group needs, this might be the place where, you know, the 4 is bringing something that weighs 1,000 pounds, you know, if you push too hard on some of these fronts. It's balancing the group needs. On the flip side, however, like oftentimes 4s will intuitively know that, you know, the group commonly does need to get more into their emotional life. The reason that we are not moving forward is because we haven't grieved this loss. We haven't named this as a negative. We haven't pushed into the places where there's emotional conflict that need to get named. We are not being real, and that's why we're suffering. Those are real gifts that 4s bring socially.
Yep, absolutely.
So in church world for us, like commonly the leadership can commonly fall on a musician who's really great at a guitar and the rest, and they come and they're like, let's sing some songs of lament, and super pastor freaks out because this is not happy. This isn't going to increase giving. This is not pushing us toward higher, faster, louder. But that is what's often needed. Is like we came here and sometimes time to be sad for a bit.
In the good sense, it's these 4s leaning on their social instinct can really provide something that the group needs and hasn't been able to get because nobody else has been bringing it. Like, let's go to some emotionally depthy places. That may be something really, really valuable for the group, and like the blending of those boundary lines allow, like, you pull other people into those emotional spaces as well because there aren't any boundaries, right?
Right.
And on the other side of that, the sensitive 4 could be projecting their own particular emotions onto the group so that when they bring something up in a meeting, assuming that everyone else feels the same way, now we're having a conversation about that 4's feelings because nobody else understands what the heck they're talking about.
Right. Yep. And there's the balance. It's finding balance here in terms of what do you bring, what's your social role. It's valuable.
Yep.
That has a strategic element to it. Not sure if I feel like 4s commonly are playing a very long game here and can commonly be just real patient here in terms of waiting for the opportunity to draw folks into the spaces that they care about most.
Yeah. And this is one that I don't know how I feel about the word strategic, but contribution is really important. I think that 4s...
Strategics for 4s or for just in general?
Oh, specifically for 4s.
Right.
In the social instinct, not that 4s are not strategic, but I don't think that's the point. I think that the point is for it to be meaningful.
Yeah.
Substantial.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, like, less concerned about, like, efficiency and, like, playing the game to get the win.
Right.
Which I think we can absolutely point to in like, we've talked about 1s, 2s, and 3s already. I think you can point to spaces where 1s, 2s, and 3s will be strategic in those ways.
Mm-hmm.
I think that 4s are more concerned about authenticity and impact.
Might point to a podcast we did a long time ago on Amadeus where we looked at Salieri, who has, in terms of strategic, maybe that's what I'm thinking in terms of a very strong motive that he's willing to wait.
Yeah, playing that long game, yeah.
So I hear you in terms of strategy gets associated with business books, and that's not what's going on here.
Right.
It's how am I going to play the long game so that I elevate and am seen? I mean, that's really what it's going to be for Salieri. That man wants to be seen.
Right.
But he can't be seen when this other guy's in the way.
Right.
something of that nature. Anyway,
Yeah.
there's an adaptability that I think fours can utilize. You see it in Salieri, in that there is, I suppose, at least for that character, he can meet other people where they're at, kind of like a 3 would.
Right.
But I can see 4s being able to do that if they really want to.
Well, and we're also talking about like villainy residing at an unhealthy security spot.
Yeah, I suppose that's true.
Like that step into grabbing onto some one space in an unhealthy way can, there's some strategy to be gained there.
I feel like 4s can put on a mask and lie straight to you, but the rest of us know you're lying. But oftentimes we're letting you do it. We're like, oh, good, now they're on board.
Oh, sure.
It's okay. You're happy today, and it's just like, yeah, today's one. You know what I mean? There.
I would, yes, but I think that I would want to nuance that and say it's more like not necessarily that they're putting on a mask, but that they're telling you what you want to hear.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think that would be the social 4 gear.
Sure.
As it were. Sometimes in order to play the long game, the 4...
They tell you what you want to hear.
The 4 will make that move. All the while kind of doing, there's going to be that slight edge of what... I don't want to call it cynicism, but I'm trying to think of the right word here. I know when 4s lie to me, I know they're lying to me, and sometimes it is exactly what I want to hear. It's like, oh, okay, we're moving the ball forward, but their motive is elsewhere. My motive's over here, and they're moving with me.
Sure.
But it's almost like I know they're lying because they're letting me know that they're lying. You know?
Yeah.
And so they retain their
clearly
authenticity.
they're just going along at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're honest to themselves. They're being honest to me because they're letting me know that they're lying, and yet still, for the sake of the social group, moving.
Yeah. I get that.
Anyway, that's more experiential than anything. Yes, I love playing this song. It's wonderful. And then the last thing to be noted is validation. Similar to ones here, idealists kind of have idealistic goals, as it were.
Yeah.
Desires. What do you see in terms of validation for 4s in social gear?
I think because we are talking about the instinct that places a tremendous amount of importance on your place in the group, 4s who naturally see themselves sort of outside or on the edges of the group, that like a big part of how they identify is based on what they don't have that everyone else does. This is a space, the social instinct on 4s pushes a much stronger sense of needing to be externally validated. And not just, hey, I'm glad you're here, but here's the one thing that only you could bring to this table.
Yeah. There it is.
Thank you for bringing that. Like there's a specificity with it that like the social 4 needs other people. Like they need the group to say, you are needed here.
You're needed here, but it has to, in similar fashion, needs to be needed for the reasons the 4 wants to be needed.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it's not you're needed here because I see something in you that you can contribute. It's you're needed here because of the things that you chose to bring to the table.
Yes. And when other people see those gifts and can name them, that's the affection and validation desired.
Yeah. Idealists who want to make a difference in the group need to be told that the things that they're doing are making a difference.
Right. Real tricky for like artists on this front. Like sometimes it really hits. The 4 artist is very, very skilled, produces something that gets seen and acclaimed in the way they desire, and it's like bang, and it's just fireworks.
Yeah.
And then for the other 99.8% of 4 artists who don't get the
They
fireworks.
look at that hack and wonder, why can't I have that? He's clearly a hack.
That's it.
I'm way better than they are.
Why don't people see you? Yeah, and that living in that space, quite tricky.
Yeah.
So I imagine that's why. So in good news, we all have different gears. So the 4s that live in that gear, I imagine, may experience a lot of validation.
Sure.
That would allow you to live in that gear. Yeah. 4s that don't may shift quickly into, that sexual pairing gear. At least one person understands me, or even go into a self-pres state.
Right.
And that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, the 4s who just want to be seen, part of how you are seen is with the social instinct.
Right.
Because it says, hey, look at me.
Yeah. And you have to, a lot of the contributions that we all want to make need to be done beyond, just the one person we want to share this with, or just sharing it to ourselves. We want to share it with others.
Right.
And that's exactly what that space looks like. The unfortunate thing where 3s can really adapt in order to win. So you don't like my oil paintings? Well, I also carve wood.
Yeah.
And I could probably figure out pencils.
Yeah, there's less adaptability.
Yeah. Oh, you guys are musicians. Well, I'll pick up the flute. Right? Whatever it is. Whereas the 4 may say, no, this is who I am, what I do, what I'm most passionate about, and not have quite that flexibility.
Do you have space for me?
Yeah. So then it becomes, I'm trying to find the group that.
Yeah. So this is a good way to understand the subtle difference. Like it's unfair to say to call it narcissism or self-involvement, but there is an internal perspective going on with 4s that's not present in all other types. And in this specific example, like the 3 who comes to the group and says, "Who do you need me to be?"
Yeah.
The 4 says to the group, "Where do I fit?"
Yeah, there you go.
Who do you need me to be versus where do I fit? Like there's a this is the fine line that separates an external focus from an internal focus.
And even really names the difference in motive there.
Yeah.
Both of them are attention seekers, and yet motive is very different.
Yes.
Boom.
Yep.
All right, man, that's what I got. Anything else on these first 4 types and social instincts?
I'm sure that if I forgot to say anything, I can come back to it.
There's going to be a part 2. Friends, it means the world to us when you listen through, and it means even more to us when you give us stars and share this episode. So if you get a chance, take a minute, give us some stars, write a review, share this episode with somebody you love. We consistently are seeing growth on our typing tool, which is the Start Here podcast. Just really excited for the amount of folks who consistently are finding this. But if you have friends who are getting into Enneagram, look up Start Here podcast, look for our Enneagram symbol, and that's apparently been quite helpful for some folks. We're going to be doing all sorts of fun stuff here in the fall, from interviews to more stuff. We're going to have a lot more content that's going to be coming up that is, I think, it's going to land in some sweet spots for us. So really excited for where we're going here soon.
Did I hear something about Pulp Fiction?
Man,
Did we say something about Pulp Fiction?
if you're on board, I've been consuming way too many YouTube film geek commentaries here recently.
Yeah. Sure.
Oh, that's what the suitcase is about. Okay. Wow.
It's his soul, right?
That's why he's got the bandage on the back of his head.
Exactly.
That's where this
Because they sucked his soul out of the back.
sneaks out. It sneaks out there. You gotta be real careful, especially when you're shaving. If you're a bald guy shaving back there, don't want your soul.
Yeah,
to
you got to be
leak out.
careful. Yeah. You don't want to open the soul hole and let it seep out.
Give that to Brett. Look at the big brain on Brett. I'm so excited for this. Okay, so you, me, Karen, we're doing that for release on October 14th, which is the 30th anniversary of both Pulp Fiction and Shawshank Redemption.
Ooh, fun.
Two the 3 greatest movies ever filmed, right there. same day.
What was the date?
October 14th, 1994.
94.
Okay.
I was 9.
Yeah. Pulp Fiction wasn't
No.
for you.
I definitely saw it too young, but not 9.
Yeah.
So.
I saw Reservoir Dogs at a buddy's house who was a 7 who was way too into like avant-garde films.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this is not
Sure.
for me.
Love it.
12 years later, 15, seriously, it took me a while to get into that movie. And now I think it's a classic,
Yeah.
but
It had to get to classic status, not avant-garde.
I just had to grow up and kind of takes a while to appreciate Shakespeare.
Sure. Yeah. I get that.
I don't know why they teach this to 9th graders, but if I was introduced to Shakespeare now, I'd really get into it.
Yeah, but how would you get introduced to Shakespeare?
Right? It's
You'd have to go to a adult education course
why
or
our
something.
society is screwed up among many other things.
Because they teach Romeo and Juliet to high schoolers.
The time that you should be learning all of the classics is somewhere in your 40s.
Sure.
What's a 17-year-old going to do with Victor Hugo? You know,
I have comments about this, but none of them are helpful.
maybe you got into Les Mis, but
I read The Hunchback of Notre Dame in middle school, man.
you're the elite though.
I was a nerd. That's what it was. Especially in middle school.
Just saying there. So, there's value in returning to the classics, friends.
Yeah, I agree.
So, in good news, you and I, we're going to provide a service for the kids. Pulp Fiction, October. It's written down.
Perfect. Love it.
All sorts of other things to say, but if you're interested, go to aroundthecircle.org or check us out on Patreon. We're going to have a lot more activity on our Patreon. So just look up Patreon and go to Around the Circle, and we're going to start releasing a bunch of stuff here this month. So that's what I got. You got anything else?
I got nothing, man.
He's CJ Wilson. He's apparently elite and a nerd.
I am a nerd.
I thought that was really fun. And I'm Jeff Kick, and who you aren't isn't interesting.